that the Kauai County Council will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. or soon thereafter at Council Chambers, 4396 Rice Street, Room 201, Historic County Building, Lihui, on the following. Bill number 2960, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 25-11.2 Kauai County Code 1987 as amended, relating to sewers. This bill proposes to amend Chapter 25, Section 25-11.2, exemptions, Kauai County Code 1987 as amended, to provide sewer connection exemption fees for workforce housing projects. Chair, we have one written piece of testimony and no remote testifiers.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, this public hearing is now closed. With that, I'll call the council meeting to order. Roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan. Here. Councilmember Carvalho. Here. Councilmember Cowden.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Present.
Councilmember Kaneshiro.
Present.
Councilmember Police is running late. Council Chair Raposo.
Here.
6 present.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Second.
Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item on page 2 are minutes from the following meetings of the council. The May 28, 2025 council meeting, June 4th, 2025 council meeting, June 4th public hearing regarding bill numbers 2954, 2955, 2956, 2957, 2958, and 2959.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item is an interview for the Planning Commission, Jackie Lynn K. Kaina, with a term ending 12/31/2027.
Okay, with that, I'll suspend the rules. Ellen?
Morning, Ellen Ching, Boards of Commissions, Administrator. Today I'm pleased to introduce Jackie Kaina. Jackie is homegrown, born and raised on Kaua'i, and a proud Kamehameha School graduate. Upon graduation, she attended Kapiolani and graduated from UH Manoa with a Bachelor's of Business Administration degree, majoring in accounting. She interned at an accounting firm and was assigned to several nonprofit clients. Jackie quickly discovered that accounting was not the field for her and transitioned to managing dental practices. Then, as life would have it, she got married and returned to Kauai to raise her children. During the next 11 years, she was a stay-at-home mom and did freelance bookkeeping for small businesses until December 2015, when she was hired as a program manager at a nonprofit organization, Kauai Economic Development Board, KEDB. Initially, she managed all the county grants and the production of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, SEDS plan. 3 years later, Jackie was promoted to Director of Programs and Business Development to create and design new initiatives. As a young intern who hated nonprofit accounting, she's come full circle. As in 2023, Jackie was promoted again, this time as the Executive Director of KDB. As a mother of 5, Jackie is active in the community. 3 of the 5 kids paddle, and she enjoys attending the canoe regattas to cheer them on. I think the ingenuity of all mothers is how they find time to do all of the things they need to. Jackie's no different, yet somehow she still miraculously finds the time to serve on several local nonprofit boards, such as Kauai Kini Charter School, Hoike Kauai Community Television, Friends of Kauai Community College, and more. Jackie's never served on a county board or commission until 2023, when she was appointed to the Charter Commission. Her peers quickly took notice of her leadership skills and elected her as their chair. With a critical vacancy on the Planning Commission, I'm so thankful that Jackie is willing to commit her very precious time to serve on the Planning Commission in the business position, to lend her knowledge and perspective as a young working mother and professional.
Thank you. Any more to add on that? Kaina?
So, aloha, Jackie Kaina, Kauai Economic Development Board. So, couple corrections. I am no longer in the Kauai Kini
board, and I am no longer, sorry, Ellen, serving on the Ho'ike Community Board. Other than that, the rest is pretty accurate.
Any questions for Jackie? Ms. Kaua'i?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being willing, and I just want to acknowledge I've known you for a good deal of time that you've been on the Kauai Economic Development Board. I'm glad to hear that you're not on the other two boards because you're jumping into the fire on the Planning Commission. That is a lot of work. I think you're a good applicant, a good candidate for the business position. Have you been to a Planning Commission meeting?
I attended virtually for the first time yesterday, and since being asked to serve, I've been kind of reading up on the different meetings, those that have been posted. So I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty daunting, you know. I've been going back and forth with some of my mentors and board members, and of course with Ellen, and just kind of talking things through. So I guess in response to what you're asking, I am worried is not the right word, but I'm feeling a little challenged. Like I'm because I guess it's not my area of expertise. So watching the Planning Commission meeting yesterday, I was kind of like, wow, that's a lot. But I'm confident enough and resourceful enough that if there are questions, which there will be many, many, many questions, I foresee, I know who to go to ask.
Yes, and I appreciate your well-connectedness to the power structure, the government structure. Appreciated your being there at Hawaii on the Hill. I have confidence that you're going to be able to rise to the occasion. When you're talking about young children, they must be like teenagers by now, right? Because the Planning Commission has the potential to be almost as much work as the council. And yesterday was, I would say, a moderate day because it had some good topics on there and important. But you know, you're going to go through college when you're doing this. It's a lot of learning, but I have confidence that you'll be able to rise to the occasion. I just want you to know it's not a simple board. It's a very, very robust effort, and I think your KEDB, Kauai Economic Development Board, will really strengthen your knowledge from the business angle, which is what you're bringing to Planning Commission. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Holland?
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm really stoked to see a woman being put into the business position who's got so many local roots and understanding about what makes Kaua'i Kaua'i. I'm wondering how you feel about the balance in that role on the Planning Commission between, you know, expanding our housing and expanding the important needs of business as well on Kaua'i, while managing our keep the country and keep our Kaua'i Kaua'i ideals. And I'm just wondering how you feel about some of those things.
How do I feel about it? It's a loaded question, but that is, I feel like it's my life's work. You know, I think I'm born and raised here. What's important to me is that, you know, I'm setting an example for my children and, you know, serving in a place where I can possibly make a difference and leading by example. And, you know, like when it comes to, gosh, the housing issue and keeping Kaua'i Kaua'i, that's a big, big job. And a lot of people are trying to tackle it. And I think in the role of, you know, commissioner and being in that position, it's really, you know, just staying rooted, knowing who I am and what Kaua'i is, and, you know, just hearing the voices of the people and just making the best decision based on what is right, I guess. I would love to keep Kaua'i Kaua'i, but I also know we have to have balance, right? We have to, in order to grow, in order to stay competitive, there has to be a balance. And so that's the hard thing for all of us, I think. So I think it's just, you know, talking to people who are seasoned and who have been walking this walk longer than I have, and hearing their mana'o, but also taking the time to hear the mana'o of the generation coming up and their kuleana is gonna be to carry this responsibility later on. So I think I don't have really an answer to that, except my heart is I want this place to be a place where our kids can afford to stay home, live, and thrive.
Awesome, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, thank you very much for agreeing to serve. The Planning Commission is, I think, the most powerful commission in the county because of the ramifications, and it's eternal. And once something is granted, it cannot be taken away. So it is definitely a tough job, and we appreciate everyone that serves. So thank you. Oh, Mr. Kanashiro.
Not a question, just discussion. I just want to say I'm happy that you're willing to serve, Jackie. I've known you for a long time. I don't envy you for being on the Planning Commission. But at the end of the day, we need people exactly like you there. We need people that are reasonable, going to get up there, you know, very rooted in the community, going to make the decisions based on what you feel is right. And, you know, that's exactly what we need. And so I'm happy you're willing to serve. I know it's going to be stressful. It's a lot of work. But, you know, you have a lot of people around you that you can go to and talk to. And at the end of the day, you just make the best decision that you feel is the right decision. And at that point, I think you can't go wrong. And so I'm happy you're there. But, yeah, good luck. But at the end of the day, I don't see us having the ability to find a lot of people willing to serve in this position. And to get Jackie here, I think, is a great thing. So I'll count our blessings on that end.
Thank you.
So.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
Here. Also, I was looking at your age. It's hard to know. You are young enough that when you went to Kamehameha schools, it was pretty robust with cultural knowledge and understanding of some of the iniquities that have happened in history, yeah? Because I think that's something that's really important to me, that on the Planning Commission that we have people who have authentic Hawaiian cultural knowledge, because we have an enduring commitment to our first population here, our Hawaiian population. So I didn't acknowledge that the first time, but that's also something that I think will bring strength to you. Do you have any comments on what you learned culturally, or you're at a lot of these different events where we are acknowledging the cultural significance of what's here, because in planning, it's really important, and often you will hear cultural elements and kaua'i analysis and things like that. So you have some education on that as well, yeah?
Yes. I think back when I was in high school, sadly, there were more students enrolled in Japanese, French, and Spanish than Hawaiian language.
Oh, okay.
And that was sad, right? Now it's beautiful to see that, Native Hawaiian organizations are rising up and they feel that they have a voice, which means they feel empowered. So that makes me happy. And it just shows that the younger generation are now taking up that kuleana and they're not afraid to do it. So very different from when I was at school, I think. I mean, of course, we're surrounded by, the Native Hawaiian. We learn all of those things because we have to, right? We learn about Kili Pauahi and the trust, but I feel like back then it wasn't as robust as it is now.
Did your children have at least some attended Kaua'i Charter School?
They did not attend Kaua'i.
But you were on the...
I was on the board.
You were on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to immerse you a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that element too, because that's an important aspect. So thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. And we'll be voting on the resolution next week.
Thank you, council members.
Anybody in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, thank you very much. Can we have the next item, please?
Next items are on the consent calendar, C2025-138 and C2025-139.
Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item on the communication, C 2025-140, communication from Councilmember Bolasan and Councilmember Holland requesting the presence of Carrie Ann Shirota, Policy Director, American Civil Liberties Unions of Hawaii, and Christy Duarte, Hawaii Home Birth Task Force Chair and President of the Hawaii Home Birth Collective, to provide a briefing regarding midwifery legislation introduced during the 2025 legislative session.
Second.
Thank you. With that, I'll suspend the rules. Mr. Bulasan, did you want to give us, or Ms. Holland, give us an overview of what's going to happen today?
Yes. So thank you, council members and our team for allowing us to have this briefing. Been following this for the last 2 years, ever since getting elected. It's something near and dear to my heart. With a new 15-month-old, no longer new actually. Gotta stop saying new. The whole process of birthing and pregnancy and postpartum and care of a new parent, a new child is something near and dear to me, and I'm sure near and dear to our community. And so tracking some of the things that are occurring at our state legislation is very important, and I wanted to get a quick update of what happened with our 2025 legislation from some of our advocates. So we asked these two presenters to be present with us. Councilor Holland, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, thank you for including me on this. I've also been trying to catch up on what's been going on this topic. I know that there was a lot of controversy about it. There was a lot of conversation, and then I've been struggling to figure out where we are with some of those bills. And so the update, I think, is really helpful for me as someone who's very in support of medical choice, home birth, someone who was born at home in Kaua'i, to a mother who gave birth to all of my siblings at home, and I've assisted many of my friends having babies at home. I definitely want to understand this, so I appreciate you including me. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll have a presentation by our guests. I believe there's two presentations. Total presentation time will be approximately 30 minutes. We'll see if the sound, well, we got to get the sound going. So Carrie, keep talking until we can hear you. Sorry, Carrie, we still can't hear you. We're fixing ourselves here on our technical side. We just want to make sure that we're getting your voice. Carrie, do you mind speaking just a little bit so we can see if...
Aloha and good morning.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Well, you are live. Take it away, Carrie Ann.
Okay. Aloha and good morning, Chair Raposo, Vice Chair Kipukai, and council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to provide an update on the midwifery licensure law. We're going to take you back in time to a little bit of context of what led up to this controversial bill and bring you to the present moment, some highlights of the bill, and we will leave an opportunity for questions from all of you. I would like to introduce some of my co-presenters. Christy Duarte is here with us today. She is from Kaneohe. She is the president of Hawaii Home Birth Collective. She also served on the Home Birth Task Force, and she has been a zealous advocate, a mom that was pounding the pavement at the Capitol for the last few years. Laulani Teal, she is the founder of Ea Hanau. She wears many hats. She's a birth worker, cultural practitioner, has her master's in public health, and she also has been for the last few years championing broad access to midwifery and birthing care in our communities. Also, I think joining us today, sorry, I can't see everyone on the screen, is Ki'i Kaho'ohanohano. She is with the Pacific Birth Collective. She is a birth practitioner from the island of Maui, Palikeiki, and she is the plaintiff in the Kaho'ohanohano case, which you'll hear a little more about today. And as far as my background, I'm the policy director for the ACLU Hawaii, but I'm from the island of Maui, from the country area, and so I know that this issue is really important to all of us, but especially for those of us who live or come from the neighbor islands and in rural communities where there's far less access to healthcare. And with that, I'm going to hit the slide and let's see if I can. So we're just going to give a quick outline. We're going to talk briefly. Chrissy's going to take you through the midwifery 2019 law that led up to the current bill. We're going to briefly discuss the litigation that is still pending in the courts. The new law passed without the governor's signature. And Lolani's going to give us some historical context to Native Hawaiian traditional, customary, and birthing practices, and some of the still challenges and some of the things that are missing from the current bill. And Ki'i will also join us to just sort of talk story, share her experiences and future opportunities for potential amendments and ways to expand care in our communities. And I would like to frame this and say the reason that the ACL is involved in this is that we believe that access to birthing choices in its full gamut for those who want to pursue OBGYNs, naturopathic physicians, midwives, palikeiki, that is the person's individual constitutional right, choice. It falls within reproductive justice and freedom and bodily autonomy, as well as privacy.
Hey, Carrie Ann, I'm just going to stop you real quick. Can you speak a little bit louder? Our speaker's a little soft, so you just have to project a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Christy right now.
Okay, aloha. Can you hear me?
That's better. Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Some of you might know me from a couple years ago when the Kaua'i County Council passed the resolution in 2023. It was a really important and vital resolution, and I just want to thank you for your support. That day, it was a long day, and I think there was like power outages and stuff, but just thank you so much for going through all the details and really trying to figure out this complex issue. And so going back to 2019, that bill did pass in 2019, but there was a sunset date. And that sunset date was set for June 30th, 2025, which is why this past session, 2025, was extremely critical to continue to pass a bill so that the midwifery licensure program would not dissolve. I also want to note that in the 2019 midwifery law, a task force was created. And the task force was very important because it was meant to resolve major issues that the bill had not addressed, and yet everyone kind of became aware of the complexity of this issue in 2019. And so the task force was put together, which I was the chair of, and legislation from the task force was brought forth every single year from 2020 all the way till 2025, trying to resolve the issues that 2019 knew about. And so the important part to remember is that in the 2019 preamble, it did say that there was an intent for the legislature to pass legislation over a 3-year period to, quote, incorporate all birth practitioners. So it was obvious from 2019 in the beginning that when the midwifery law passed, it had left out a lot of different practitioners of which the community needed access to make our community safer. And so just looking briefly back, looking at that slide, the 2019 midwifery law was very restrictive. And when I say restrictive, I mean the pathway to licensure was not meant for our community. 0 of the 42 licensed midwives, none of them were Kanaka Maoli. None. And only 1 of the 42 licensed midwives was born and raised in our islands. And that should show you that this midwifery law was not intended to necessarily accommodate what our community had access to, but rather it was meant to bring in, and that's kind of what it did. It brought in a lot of midwives from the continent who said, woohoo, licensure is available in Hawaii, here I go. And they all came here. And so every year there was advocacy saying, hey, we need a licensure pathway that allows our communities to have access so that people who are from here are able to have a license if they choose. Number 3, the 2019 midwifery law also had a birth attendant exemption, and that expired in July 2023. And this was very important because it allowed everyone to have access to who they wanted to assist them in their birth. And it created a safer community for us, because now it required disclosure forms, it required transfer plans, it required every person assisting in a birth to disclose their training and education. And that allowed the birthing families to have choices. And so in 2023, July is when that birth attendant exemption expired. And in gearing up for the 2024 legislative session, I met with legislators and I said, hey, we need to have something because our birth attendants, these are all different cultural and religious practitioners. Our communities cannot access them and they're subject to criminal penalties now. And key legislators told me, no. Birth attendants are not midwives, Christy. Birth attendants are legal. You don't have to worry about anything. Why would you want to put a bill forward if it's going to regulate these other practitioners? And I said, well, that's great news. Do you think I could get a letter from the enforcement agency, DCCA and RICO, to clarify that birth attendants would not be subject to criminal penalties and families also could no longer live in fear of choosing who they wanted in their home when they give birth? And so when I contacted the DCCA, that's when everything started to unravel with the Attorney General opinion coming out and the DCCA confirming to me that not only were birth attendants subject to criminal penalties, but grandmothers and all sorts of other professionals that assist in birth would also be subject to jail time and fines. And lastly, something that we've kind of continually advocated for over the years was that the exemption for the Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practitioners, it was not sufficient or actively happening. So nobody was recognized by Papa Ola Lokahi. And I think it's really important to note that the court actually found that this exemption did not effectively protect Native Hawaiian traditional birthing practitioners. So last summer, the judge actually ruled to block the law and that Native Hawaiian practitioners should be able to practice without being subject to criminal penalties. So I'll pass that over to Carrie Ann to explain more on the lawsuit and the injunction.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I'm just going to spend a really quick, just kind of overview in this case. Again, Ki'i, who is here with us, is the lead plaintiff in this case. Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation and the Center for Reproductive Rights, which is a national organization, and they do global work in reproductive freedom and litigation. They filed this lawsuit against the state, essentially saying that the law that passed in 2019 was unconstitutional on a number of levels, that it restricted reproductive rights for all birthing persons, but in addition, that on its essentially face and in practice, that it was violating our Hawaii Constitution's mandate, which is to affirm Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices, and that the way that it was applied, it was essentially violating that aspect of our Constitution. And so the state granted an injunction, a preliminary injunction, essentially saying that the law could not be enforced in terms and against Native Hawaiian practitioners from criminal, civil penalties for those who practice, teach, and learn palikeiki and hanau and ho'ohanau practices. Now that case is still pending. What happens next, really, it's going to be between the attorneys and their clients, because the law, this old law, has literally passed into the sunset and a new law has taken effect. I think this is going to be moving forward and to see if the new bill passes constitutional muster. Let's jump to the next slide. Sorry, everyone. I'm probably the least prepared to flip sides here. Okay. And HB 1328, maybe if I'll go one back. Christy, do you want to briefly highlight these? What happened? So I'll just set the stage for this. The community response to this 2019 bill that we knew that was about to sunset, and there was litigation. So you have a lot of leverage points. There's pressure at the state capitol to pass a bill or not at all. And so this led to the community coming together and introducing this bill. And Christy, if you'd like to briefly highlight this.
Yes, so the HB 1328 had 14 introducers sign on to it. It was a bill that was widely circulated and supported from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs all the way through different counties and just different community organizations that recognized how important certain aspects were of this bill that needed to be made part of our community and legal. And so, long story short, it actually came down to HB 1328 and another bill that just popped out of nowhere, right? So I just want to go over real quick. HB 1328 was important because it allowed a pregnant person the right to choose where and with whom they give birth with. This was a reproductive rights issue, which is why also part of the lawsuit included the Center for Reproductive Rights and the Native Hawaiian Legal Corp filing against the state. It also expanded access to licensure by recognizing nationally recognized certification pathways to licensure. So over 70% of states that have licensure use this apprenticeship pathway. And the funny thing is, it is kind of funny, is whether you choose the accredited education pathway or the apprenticeship pathway, you have to both take the same exam at the end of the day. And you both have to pass the exam. And then you get the same certificate. And so this pathway was something that HB 1328 included so that our local midwives could have access to licensure. And it also allowed our licensed midwives to practice to the full scope of their training and certification. It also included protection for Native Hawaiian traditional customary practices. It included birth attendants, provided that they continue to provide disclosure requirements. It provided religious and cultural protections similar to our Hawaii nursing statute, which also has protection for religious practitioners. And it did not criminalize family and other birth professionals.
Thank you so much, Christy. I'm going to try to talk louder for some reason. So the
Carrie,
contract.
Carrie, sorry for interrupting, but is your microphone volume set to the highest?
Yes, it is. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Okay, thank you.
I'll try to project more. So HB 1194 was the opposite of the community bill. It was introduced by a smaller handful of representatives, and it was the contrast to much of the principles in the other bill. Now, these are just highlights again. The bills are like 60 pages, so in the interest of time, there was no allowance for apprenticeship pathway. It included restrictions on the scope of practice. It recognized an exemption for Native Hawaiian traditional birthing practices, but with limiting language that was criticized by Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. And there were no clear exemptions for birth attendants, religious and cultural practices, extended family, other professionals. And this bill was really being pushed by ACOG, which is the society, essentially the Association of OBGYNs, and a small organization called Midwives Alliance of Hawaii, which I think that there are less than 10 members in contrast to Pacific Birth Collective, Hawaii Home Birth Collective. Literally, if you were at these hearings lasted hours where you had people, families, makua, people who talked about their own birth stories, these traditional practices that had been practiced within their family for generation upon generation, coming to testify in support of the other measure versus this one. But as you can imagine, this is a political process, and what sort of shook out at the end of this is that the one bill got a hearing that we preferred. It died after that. It was held. It was deferred. And so our tactic, we strategized and we pivoted that we needed to put in as many amendments as possible in the principles from the other bill. And so at the end of the day, what passed? Act 28, it makes these midwifery licensure laws permanent. Now, things could change, but there's no sunset on this bill. It clarified scope of practice for licensed midwives. It allowed for an apprenticeship pathway for CPM, which is, again, the apprenticeship pathway that Christy just spoke of. And this is critical because the House leadership, they were not generally supportive of this, but Senator San Buenaventura and Senator Keoho Kalole on the Senate side championed for inclusion in this. And I want to acknowledge Senator San Buenaventura in particular, because if you can see here and you looked at who introduced the community-led bill, we really had leadership from the neighbor islands, from Maui, Hawaii Island, who really pushed for as many amendments in this bill to truly serve communities, especially on the neighbor islands and in rural communities. The new bill law allows for exemptions, including Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices. They took the language suggested by Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, and there's a strong legislative intent to eliminate all criminal penalties that were attached if someone were practicing midwifery, even traditional practice outside the scope. But civil penalties still remain, and they could technically fine someone up to $1,000 a day. And so that's still problematic if they're going to be enforcing this in a certain strict manner. It allowed for peer review requirements to study outcomes for both home births, midwifery care, community. For those who are in the community, they feel like some of those provisions are overly burdensome and that there's still a bias embedded in that. And even though this is not a part of the bill, my understanding is that a grant and aid application was submitted, I believe, by Pacific Birth Collective, and they were awarded some money for those who want to pursue a midwifery clinical schooling. And I just want to note, here in Hawaii, we do not have any midwifery school. Hence the importance of apprenticeship practice where people learn from other practitioners. And so what we found is that some people, even if they wanted the clinical practice, that they would need to travel thousands of miles to another state for costs that were just outside of the reach of many families. And the opposite of that, many people did not want to leave Hawaii. They wanted to stay here and to train and to learn cultural practices very specific, whether it's borrowing from religious, Native Hawaiian, Samoan, and other practitioners within the community. And with that, I'm going to turn to Laulani. She's going to take us back a little bit and sort of talk about the foundation and sort of what she sees as what's on the horizon and things to be concerned about moving forward with the bill. Thank you, Laulani.
Aloha, everyone. Can you hear me? I know there's been some audio challenges. Okay, aloha. Okay, I'm Laulani Teal, and I am a birth worker, and also I'm a cultural practitioner whose practices overlap birthing practice quite a bit. And I've been in the Hanau community for 31 years, and have been in this as a mother, as an assistant to friends, and then a doula, and then finally as a standalone practitioner and also a cultural practitioner who attends births. So I want to say that it's really important to understand in Hawaii that Hanau is our single oldest cultural practice. So no matter how you cut it, whether it's from the time of Po, when the night gives birth, and through the coral polyp and, all of that mo'olelo, or whether you consider it from the first person who stepped, the first wahine who came off of a va'a and gave birth on the shores, either way, the act of giving birth is the oldest thing that connects us as Kanaka to Aina. And it's very, very, it's very essential to our being. And so for the last 30 years, there has been a renaissance, reclamation of birthing practices, where we have a lot of indigenous practitioners of all different kinds, not only midwives, but also many other practitioners who overlap midwifery practice. And one of the essential things to understand is that we also have many people coming into this, as I did, through the piecing together of ancestral traditions with the help of non-native practitioners. So it's really, really important to understand that most Kanaka birthing practitioners get their start from training with, or at least being assisted by non-native practitioners, and these are generally traditional practitioners. So many of these are unlicensed traditional people, because those are the people who can best assist us in piecing together our ancestral traditions. So that's a very important thing to understand. I think in the world of cultural birthing, it's very important to understand that there is a very high learning curve. In many ways, it's traditionally, it's a very immersive learning that isn't taught formally, but it's very it takes a lot to understand it. And I think that that's been part of the challenge with legislation, has been overcoming the barriers to really understanding what makes up these practices. And since this is a very short presentation, I just want to end by saying that it's very, very important. As a public health practitioner, I'm going to say that the relationship between birthing practices and health is, in the Kanaka Maoli world, is extremely crucial. And the reason for that, the primary reason for that, is because of the concept of ea, or the life breath of human beings that is part of us from the time of birth onward. And it's the sovereignty that lives in every person, and so birthing practices actively cultivate that. And the act of birthing is very healing. In traditional birthing is very healing for that ea. So it's a very, very important part, along with nutrition and, traditional foods and many other things. It's very, very important restoration that needs to happen in the act of restoring Kanaka health and thereby community health. So mahalo. That's just my short overview. If anyone has any questions, I'm here. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Olani. And I just want to point out, we have, just in the interest of time, but there's data that has been shown in some reports that have looked at the maternal health and maternal morbidity in Hawaii. And tragically, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders have the highest maternal mortality rates, even when they looked at national data compared to even African American and Native American women. And so this is really a very serious matter.
And not one of those is related to a home birth. Not one.
And so I think it's really important for us to look at what's really happening in our communities and how do we address these severe maternal health disparities, much of which have a racial component, I think needs to be discussed. And these are just quickly some future opportunities. There are some suggested amendments to the bill that we tried to get in through conference committee, but the lawmakers were concerned that it might not survive conference committee. And so they reached an agreement. They had differences between the House and Senate version. They changed, they consented to it. So it bypassed conference committee, but there are literally some draft amendments that could be ready to go. Administrative rules have yet to be passed. It's really important that we do public education about what is included in the bill, what is not. And I believe that Christy is in conversation with Senator Keohokalole's office to have a community public education discussion from DCCA, Commerce Consumer Affairs, that oversees the midwifery licensure program. It remains to be seen the extent of enforcement, and looking at all of this from also a trauma-informed care and health lens. As you know, Governor Green announced that we are a trauma-informed care state, and we think that by removing choices, reproductive health choices from community, that is trauma-inducing and not trauma-informed care. And so we want to really align with all of these principles. And I also want to give the opportunity, because Ki'i is here with us today and she's the lead plaintiff and has put so much heart and time. So we're going to open up for questions, but I also want to ask Ki'i if she would like to share some mana'o and then open it up for questions. Ki'i, are you with us still?
Yes, aloha mai kākou. I think out of time, I think you guys did a wonderful, short version of all many, many years, over a decade. Actually, this has been something that we've been, for lack of better words, fighting for pono. So I think, I just want to mahalo all of you for your open ears and open hearts in receiving all of this mana'o today. It's a very complex issue. And as he said, I am the main plaintiff, lead plaintiff in the case. We do have, at this point, 8 other plaintiffs, and still, navigating what our next steps are officially within that. And I think really right now, for sake of time, if you have questions for me more specifically to the lawsuit or to, who I am in my community as a palikiki practicing on Maui County for over 20 years with no poor outcomes, and, also someone who is dedicated to perpetuation of these practices and leading our OPO and being able to work under me and work, with other kupuna, other sources that have been mine, that I'm sharing, bringing them to, so that they can be the future practitioners. So it's really important that we don't lose these practices. We've already come so close, to losing so much of what is ours in so many ways. And so for me, this is my life's work and my life's passion to make sure that the future generations are stronger than we were, that we can maintain our identity and reclaim our air. So mahalo.
Mahalo, Ki.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Okay, my simple question. This is Felicia. My simple question is, what are you asking of our council? I think that what was really evident when everybody was in here before is how supportive we are, although we have a little bit of different team. This is a lawsuit, so I don't know how the council necessarily can assist. Are you asking for us to help reintroduce it for the next legislative season through our Hawaii State Association of Counties? What is the ask of council? Because I think you have a lot of support here, but we can't help a court case.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think really this, was meant to be more of an informational briefing, but I think the ask, for maybe the future to consider, if the community comes forth to introduce additional amendments in the future, likely we would be coming back to the Kauai County Council, Maui, and Hawaii Island, and hopefully City and County of Honolulu will come on board. But for now, it was really meant to be an informational briefing. And again, if amendments are pitched in the future, we would ask for the county's support. And it would be to be in alignment with the principles that we've mentioned and that are still missing or could be more robust in the legislation. Thank you, Council.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Holland?
Thank you so much for the update. I appreciate all that you guys are doing on this topic. I have not been able to keep my head into the details of this, so I really do appreciate it. I'm wondering how many midwives we have allowed to practice here on Kauai under the current situation. I know the midwife that helped bring me into the world, Auntie Catherine Downey, I don't know if she's still practicing. I don't know if Auntie Aubrey is.
They aren't.
And we obviously lost the legend of Claudia Brown a few years ago, who gave birth to a whole generation of my friends' children. So I'm just wondering if you know how much access we have here on Kauai to midwives that are able to practice.
I am not familiar, but Christy, do you have members from Kauai, from the Hawaii Home Birth Collective, or even any of you? Hello, Lenny or Ki'i?
Yeah, we do have a few that are members of Hawaii Home Birth Collective, but I think it's important to understand too that the licensed midwives that are present are serving the communities, but the community might not necessarily want to choose a licensed midwife because of their training and education being something completely different from their own cultural or religious perspectives and beliefs and understanding about birth. And so choices are extremely restricted in Kauai because only one type of midwife really is allowed to practice. and it's going to take a long time, I think, for the apprenticeship pathway to be one that really allows our communities who are from here to be able to train up the next generation. So, I mean, if we could pass amendments next year, that would be amazing. You know, it's needed. It's so needed because right now things are not safe and it's dangerous because people are birthing unassisted because they feel forced to, not because they choose to, because the people that they feel safe with are not allowed to serve them or they're afraid. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's not safe because of Act 28 that is in place right now. So we do need future change.
Can I just add to that just briefly? Thank you, Christy. So there are a handful of midwives on Kaua'i that are licensed, like we said. Part of the problem, though, that I want to highlight is that what is happening is that, yes, we have, a handful of midwives on various islands, potentially. Not all of them, but most of them. Majority of them are coming from the outside, like we mentioned, since licensure especially. Not that we haven't had outsiders. That's, we've loved most of our outsiders because they have come into our community to serve. And we need everyone. So that's not the thing. But the thing is that since licensure and since this has occurred, people are coming over because they can get the education and training, come over here and get licensed. And because of that, accessibility is actually not heightened as we would expect, but it's actually limited because they're also coming with mainland prices and mainland, like thinking they're somewhere else. They don't know where they are yet. And so they're used to operating in hospitals and within labs and insurance and all these areas that like Hawaii is not there. And so they come here and actually what's happening is a limitation for families to be able to have access to care, even just financially, because for instance, like myself, I have never charged a rate. In over 20 years, I've always worked by donation. With my Lomi practice, my La'au practice, with my Hanau practices, everything that I do is by donation. And so, we work things out. That might be monetary, that might be fish and poi, like that might be different things for me. But for me, it's about serving the people and having access to the care that they feel is necessary and desirable to them. It's about returning birth home for our people and healing the past generations of trauma, and I could go on and on about that, right? But because of licensure and the way things are going down, people are actually more limited. Even folks that were having babies, that were supporting our bill 1328 this past session, they would come to us afterwards and say, gosh, I really hope something changes because we're up high right now and we can't even afford a home birth because the people that are out there licensed and available are charging 10 grand and there's no insurance, where we work on a sliding scale or by donation and we make it feasible for people because it's not necessarily our profession. This is a life's work and this is about healing. This is about supporting our people and holding them in the ways that are necessary to heal and to bring forth our future generations in the most beautiful ways. There's a lot of fear around birth because we only know it from a hospital standpoint these days for the most part. So I understand people that question like, why do we do what we do? It's so scary. It's not safe. But actually, if you look at statistics and if you look at what is real for low risk births, it's the most safe for us to be in our very natural setting with to support people that we feel supported by and loved by, and that's how we do it in such a beautiful way. So anyways, kalamai, long. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it. It's not just like whether we have them, can we access them, and are they culturally appropriate? Because even cultural integrity will improve in outcomes just all by itself.
And I do want to share that Hawaii Home Birth Collective represents the largest membership of licensed midwives across our state. And they were really, really supportive this session, the licensed midwives, wanting to make sure everybody had a choice and that everybody could practice. And so we had a majority of licensed midwives constantly asking the legislators, please don't criminalize these other types of midwives and please don't fine them. Allow them to practice and have disclosure requirements. And so
and
we do appreciate
actually, that's also, sorry, I want to interject because it's so important. That's largely because all of their assistants are these people. So these licensed midwives might be able to practice, but all the people, where they've been practicing on Kauai for 10 or 15 years or wherever in Hawaii, they're not able to have the support people that they've depended on potentially for decades. Our elder midwives are illegal. The people who taught me, the people who taught us, who've been practicing for 40 plus years in Hawaii, they're illegal currently. And that's a shame.
Mr. Bulasan?
Thank you, everyone, for presenting. Really appreciate you guys taking the time for the community, especially new potential parents who are trying or families who have gone through the birthing process and interested. They might be confused in this conversation. Would like to get you guys clarification. What exactly is the difference between a midwife, a birthing attendant, and a doula? Because I think what happens oftentimes in our community, especially around this very special process for families, that they don't know what their options are and who to ask for help with. You guys mind clarifying? And how Act 28, who does that Act 28 apply to?
Do you want me to answer that, or you want to answer that?
Yeah,
okay.
No, please, I'll let the practitioners here, Ki'i and Olani.
So that's where this issue is, it really is, gets confusing for folks, like you said. We have many different types of midwives. Yeah, midwife isn't just one cookie cutter, one size fits all. So there are CNMs, which is a certified nurse midwife. And certified nurse midwives are not supposed to be a part or affected by this law, although they have been imposing their standards upon CPMs, which this law is about. CMs, which is a certified midwife, is the same essential pathway to certification and licensure as a CNM or a CM. You also take it's the same standards, same test. It's just a different route. But those practitioners are typically working in hospitals. They can run birth centers. They can have independent private practices. And they can also help train CPMs, which is a different form of midwife. So that's that kind of grouping in a nutshell. Then there's the CPM, Certified Professional Midwife. And that is what this law pertains to. So this is supposed to be about just CPMs. Somehow, they also group CMs, or Certified Midwives, into this law as well. And that's extremely problematic. And we could go on all day just about that. But that is very problematic. And they haven't yet totally addressed that issue in the current legislation. So CPMs is a certified professional midwife, which has two routes under the NARM certification. You do an apprenticeship pathway, which is the PEP process, which is what they have so far not wanted to allow us to have, that apprenticeship model to be able to get licensed from home. They are asking us to do a MEEC accredited program, which doesn't essentially exist in Hawaii. You can do online schooling, which is very costly and prohibitive for people, especially in low-income rural areas, which would be me, and many that I know, for that matter. Plus, I think that just ethically, like learning something online when it's so different, it's just a different perspective for some. So there's nothing like being in person and hands-on and doing, comparatively. But that is an option, very expensive. And I would say also that in this process, we've seen the number of schools that are MEEC accredited throughout the United States actually diminishing because it's not really working. And so they are slowly closing, just a side note. But yeah, to be giving us the online option is one thing, but we still need preceptors. So we still need someone who is, in fact, a CPM, who is MEEC accredited CPM, has that same pathway, obviously from somewhere else, to come here, or we have to travel to them to be able to go get our numbers and have all of the births and all of the skills and all of the things that are necessary to pass the NARM signed off, the same way that we would with an apprenticeship program. But it's different. Yeah. And then you also have to be enrolled in a MEEC accredited school in a program officially, having a preceptor to sign off on your births. Even as a student, you're not like actually legal to practice as a student if you're not in a MEEC program. So that's really limiting as well. I know there's a lot. I hope you're following me and I'm talking fast, but and then there are different words for like direct entry midwife, lay midwife, traditional midwife, polycake or cultural midwife, religious midwives. You know, there are different types of midwives because, as Auntie Lovelani stated in her presentation, this is the oldest profession. Like, we have been giving birth, we have been holding each other as wahine, and you know, not even just wahine, our kane. That's what is also happening more in these realms. Is we are actually returning this kuleana and returning this. You know, this role to our kane to support and be present with their wahine. Often, yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there a website or that lists all the different what you just shared? Because you shared like a lot of great information and
yeah. I mean, and you know, it's a lot. It's vast. I don't know that it's on a website per se. I know that we could probably put something together for you folks. To be clear, can you guys think of a place where we actually have that already, Christine?
Yeah, I think it probably is on Hawaii Home Birth Collective, but just from like a law or bill aspects of language and definitions, when we look back to Act in 2019, when this term birth attendant came about, it was put in by the House. Because prior to that, the Senate referred to birth attendants as traditional midwives. And so what the House did was they said, hey, we want to own the title midwife. So now we're going to like try to remove traditional midwives and we're just going to call all these others birth attendants. So to answer simply, birth attendants are midwives.
Thank you.
And, but right now the only thing that's legal are these Western trained clinical midwives. All other traditional and religious midwives who have been practicing since the beginning of time are not allowed to practice. And in closing, I think I wanted to share at the final reading, after the bill did not go to conference, it went to the House for final reading. 16 House reps voted no at final reading. And it was a bipartisan no. And that day, over 17 nations of indigenous midwives flew in and were sitting in the chambers in the House saying, hey, we are not recognized. We are illegal. And that really made the House understand, I think, that day when they all voted no against this midwifery bill, that this bill is not pono because all other indigenous practices, religious practices, cultural practices are now, subject to heavy fines.
Thank you, Christy. And just to clarify, you're referring to HB 1194.
Yes, 16 no's at final reading.
And so in your presentation, it does say that it passed.
It did pass because that it wasn't the majority, right? I think we needed like half of the House to vote no that day, but 16 voted no. But it did pass, and it passed into law without the governor's signature.
Okay, and just to clarify, as you already mentioned, so currently any practicing cultural practitioners right now under Act 28, there is no specific law that protects or supports them, so therefore they're practicing illegal.
Well, there's no. Go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, I would just say it depends. I guess have to, as the lawyer here, I would just add it's sort of a factual basis. So it's true that right now there is an exemption for Native Hawaiian cultural practices relating to birthing. So it's exempt. So the law should not be enforced against them. Whether they choose to have a license or not, they can pursue licensure, but they're not required to do so. We were pitching another exemption that would have allowed for cultural as well as religious birthing practices. Unfortunately, it did not get into the bill. And I'd like to point out there are some other jurisdictions that have codified in statute exemptions for both cultural and religious birthing practices. So that is correct. There could be someone who's practicing cultural or religious birthing practices, and if they do not have a license, whether through the apprenticeship or through the clinical midwifery school, then they would be considered illegally practicing and could be subject to enforcement and very harsh civil penalties. Now, it's up to DCCA, Commerce Consumer Affairs, whether they're going to be enforcing it to that level. It typically would be generated if someone files a complaint. Our hope that it will not be used in that manner, but the statute allows for it under the current law. Hopefully that adds a little more nuance and context to your question.
Thank you. And I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, we're not pregnant, we're not expecting kids, but if my wife and I found out today and we decided to contact an amazing organization like Kaua'i and get support and utilize Native Hawaiian traditional practices for our birthing practices and get selected an OBGYN and get everything signed up, and 9 months later we're in 9 months later we're in the hospital, and that practitioner's with us and she's assisting us or he's assisting us as a traditional cultural practice, she potentially is practicing illegally.
In the hypothetical that you're speaking to, if that person is practicing Native Hawaiian cultural practices, that there should be an exemption, but it would be up to the hospital, to the birthing center, if they would allow that person to come into their, quote, facility and to utilize those practices. Again, it allows for it, but it doesn't mean that any other hospital or private medical center would have to allow that. There would still be that potentially consent or allowance for it. So I don't know if Key has had experience, I believe, working with Maui Memorial Hospital. Key, do you want to just share some, whether you're allowed in?
I am personally, I've been working on Maui for so long, building relationships, and I assisted in the hospital, for many, many years, over 20 years. So I built relationships. During COVID, they put together a list, all upon themselves, and they included, those of us that have been in the birth community supporting families for many years. So I was blessed to be put on that list. They haven't since added anyone to that list, but you can come in typically, in general, just as a friend or family member. If you are on the list, like myself, the person can have 2 people typically, but if you're on the list, they can have the 3. So like mom, husband, and me, because I'm on the list. But if you're not on the list, it can only be the 2. That's sort of a limitation. But as far as implementing cultural birthing practices within the hospital, I've had really a few times, just very few times, really receptive, beautiful experiences, I will say. But for the most part, it's very limiting. It's very, very difficult. There isn't, even with my strong relationships, I actually loaned me half the staff at a certain point. All the nurses were coming to me. And it's not a matter of whether they like me or whether they believe in what we do, but there's policy and liability and different things like that. So, I can't even give like a compress on the yoni, on the, as the baby's coming, a lot of times we'll do a hot compress on the mother's vagina, to soften and welcome and all the things that it does. And so I can't do simple things like that because that's crossing their boundaries. And so if I can't do that, it's just really limiting. And then they also do power trips. Like there's power trips I've seen. It's the most trauma I've ever experienced is actually in those ways where like they hold your ieve or the placenta that was requested, and we did all the proper things in all the proper manner, and we're super respectful the whole time. But it's like a power trip with this doctor, and I can't explain it. But I've seen it repetitively. So that's part of a cultural practice that was interrupted. And after, this mommy kind of honestly had the worst ever induction and 3-day long process and ended up with cesarean. The only thing she really felt like she had left was that EFA took it from her, you know? So, I tell you that kind of like feels like a graphic story, but at the same time, like that's what we're experiencing. That's harm that's happening in those spaces when we try to incorporate cultural elements. And like I said, I have had times where they've let us catch the baby with our tapa, you know, or incorporate oli or different aspects of who we are. But that's their house, you know, and it's like when you come to my hale, I'm going to ask you to hamo your shoes and eat my food and smile, even if it's not your favorite. You know, so we need to be accommodating going into their house on some level, even though we come in strong with aloha and what we're there to hold, but there's limitations. And so it doesn't matter how great of a practitioner you are or what you know or what you have to share. When you go into those spaces, it can be challenging. I hope that answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Key.
And also I understand what you're asking in regards to are they going to be considered illegal, right? So when we look at the language of the law, there's an exemption portion. So there's a clear exemption that says under the Hawaii State Constitution, Article, I think it was 7, you know, those practicing those traditional customary practices are exempt and do not need a license. But then when you look, the confusing part, because I've had conversations with the DCCA, is when you look at the actual definition of midwifery and the scope, there's like, I think 19 things listed. And I asked the DCCA, what if I do 3 of those 19 things? Am I practicing midwifery without a license? Well, I don't know, Christy. It's not clear. It's not like that. You just have to kind of, you know, it's not clear what exactly is midwifery. And I think that's also where it's kind of put the community in confusion and fear, because everyone's trying to figure out, do I have to do all 19 things to be considered a midwife practicing midwifery and I need a license? Or can I do a couple of them and I'm okay? Or am I going to be subject to heavy fines of $1,000 a day?
Thank you, Christy.
Any other questions for the panel? If not, thank you all very much. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, I'll call a meeting back to order. Any further discussion, Ms. Cowden?
Okay, I thank them for their testimony. I support the reproductive rights regardless of race, origin, or culture. I'm glad there's a carve-out to protect the Hawaiian culture. This is Hawaii. Childbirth is a natural human function throughout history and across the planet. The current norm for the majority of expectant mothers is to rely on the medical system. Greater freedom for alternative birth choices should not be seen as a threat to their business model. Known high-risk deliveries almost always happen in a hospital. I chose to give birth with a midwife in the hospital. It was Claudia Brown, by the way, but at that time that I had a baby, the only problem deliveries at Wilcox had an obstetrician. You know, it was normal to have a midwife. In my experience on Kaua'i, even 40 years ago, expected mothers in my world and my demographic, I'm not Kanaka, were confidently giving birth at home, typically in a bathtub, sometimes even by themselves if needed. Most often this casual birth process was not a first child, but I knew people who just would go in the bathroom and have a baby. And it just, more often than you would expect, it's just like, it's if somebody knows how to do it and they had several, it's not that big of a deal for some of them, many of them, not me. Many people do not trust the interventions in the modern medical system. Overregulation of childbirth practices is likely to drive more expectant moms into having their babies without the support of committed traditional birth attendants or midwives, whatever we call them. The existing restrictive law will probably result in greater risk than a more expansive opportunity for birth attendants. I thank you guys for your presentation. I support your efforts and wish success with the verdict in your court case. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Holland?
Just briefly, yes, I really appreciate the update. I'm also continually baffled at government overreach in certain things like home birth.
It's like been happening for hundreds of thousands of years. Women have been giving birth. The fact that those things, those regulations, seem just so onerous and unfair. So I appreciate the update, and if there's anything that we can do on a council level, just being prepared to support our community and those access to whatever kind of medical support that they want for giving birth.
Mahalo.
Mr. Bulasan.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the council members for allowing us to have this briefing. Oftentimes we get these opportunities to do these briefings that is regarding to some function that is related to county functions, and this might seem very far off topic from any county functions, especially if there's no Department of Birthing or Department of anything similar to that. But the relation to our council is that in 2023 we did pass a resolution that showed support of the efforts that is occurring with the practice of our community around the most sacred practice, I think, for all human beings that have centered us in the place to that if these practices weren't in place for the generations that have come, we would not be who we are today, and it's the root to all the how we can become who we are. I didn't think this was going to be ever important to me. It was never a top agenda item in my entire life up until exactly 25 months ago, when my wife pulled me on the side and showed me a picture of a beautiful baby that was growing within her. And from that moment, 25 months ago, I made every effort to understand, learn, and engage the process of becoming a parent, and then the idea of becoming a father, but also then enrolling myself in every opportunity in my whole being, professionally and personally, to make that process the most beautiful and amazing thing that anyone could ever experience. And unfortunately, the difficult part about that is, as we know, the journey is never just a beautiful garden of amazing things that you get to enjoy. It comes with roadways and challenges. And in my position, professionally and personally, comes great responsibility to Kila Apili Aloha Ikikai Loa me my son, my wife, Nicole Cristobal, and then to every parent and every child that is being born here in Hawaii, that we take every effort to give and share and improve where we can. And in our birthing process, it was the most magical 9 months that I could ever experience. And I wish and I hope, and I'm doing everything possible in my being to allow and have other parents to have that access. We were able to do a centering parenting program through our through KVMH that allowed us to have a birthing process and pregnancy process with our Dr. Purcell at KVMH. We then also did a program with Birthing Within a Nation to allow us to connect to our cultural roots, so that we are connected to Aina and people, so that we are birthing not only and having this process in a healthy, safe way, but also connected to everything that we are and who we want to become. We also got support from Kalau Kekahuli, an amazing organization to help mothers and future parents and postpartum services. All of these things I did not realize was potentially controversial. I thought this should be normal. And the sad and challenging part is that many parents and future families enroll themselves into these processes and get confused and get mixed messages, and are in fear of pursuing help in such a beautiful process that I think anyone who have gone through it knows it's a magical thing. And so the relation to our council and how we passed this resolution 2033, and for us to keep following up on it to make sure that these same opportunities are afforded to future parents is truly important, because it is literally setting the stone in place for the future generations to uphold and care for, going backwards to our kupuna and going forwards to our keiki. And if we can set this foundation right and continue to work and rework to set this one right, like all the most important things that we have, housing, food, shelter, healthcare, basic functions like wastewater, they all don't exist if we're all not healthy. And so this is a very important topic for our council, and I'm glad that our council is willing to hear this briefing. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, the motion is to receive. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item.
Next item on page 3, C 2025-141, communication from the Emergency Management Administrator requesting council approval to receive, expend federal grant funds in the amount of $4,000 from the United States Department of Homeland Security via the State of Hawaii Department of Defense to support emergency management programs that strengthen their capabilities to address all hazards and support inter-island travel expenses for Kaua'i Emergency Management Agency staff and partners to attend training and exercise activities. These funds need to be expended by September 30th, 2025 and have no cost-sharing requirement.
Mike's.
Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
C 2025-14, communication from the county engineer requesting council approval to receive and expend state funds in the amount of $391,752 from the State of Hawaii Department of Health and to indemnify the state DOH for the fiscal year 2026 grant cycle for the High Five Deposit Beverage Container Program to be used to fund 2 High Five recycling specialist positions, support mobile redemption center operations in Kekaha and Kaloa, and support the lease of the redemption center in Kekaha.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
C 2025-143, communication from the county attorney requesting council approval of the indemnification provisions contained in terms of service for Logic Call, an e-discovery tool which allows the county to efficiently collect, preserve, review, and produce electronically stored information in response to litigation, public records requests, and investigations.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or public testimony?
I have a very quick question.
Okay, with that, I'll suspend the rules.
This is, we already have this, right? We're just extending this. This isn't anything new.
Matt Bryden, County Attorney. We've had it in the past. Council has approved the indemnification provision in the past. At this point, the contract's lapsed, so this will be a new contract for something we have used in the past. We've used several different softwares over the years. This one seems to work the best, so we're going to get a new contract to do this.
And so what does it do exactly? It just helps you look things up?
So when we get either public records requests or just through the litigation process when they ask for documents, oftentimes we have to sift through a lot of emails. So emails is kind of the best example. Okay. So you can take a large amount of emails and put them into this software, and you can remove duplicates. You can go through and then you can redact areas that need to be redacted. You can roll emails from a chain into one. So it really just compiles information and then makes it searchable. So we're using less manual time reading through things and kind of using software.
And would this be when somebody does a UIPA request typically?
Yeah, this will be used for that as well. We're getting more UIPA requests that include emails, and the difficulty is our IT department has to process those requests, and then oftentimes they're packaged in very large amounts of emails to the departments, and sometimes those emails will include things that aren't necessarily relevant to the request and might include attorney communications. So this software can help us cut that out, so then departments have less to look at.
And does it assist the redaction? I know sometimes in the past going through page by page and redacting, that was a big issue. This makes that a simpler process?
It does. You can use the software to permanently redact things.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
C-2025-144, communication from the Managing Director requesting council approval to accept the donation of a well-known 52-inch by 52-inch painting entitled Island Ritual by Ray Yoshida from the Ray Yoshida collection, which has been featured in magazines and books and is considered one of his early works with an estimated value of $25,000.
Move to approve with a thank you letter to the Ray Yoshida Trust.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or public testimony? Not? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item is C-2025-145, communication from Assistant Chief of Police Darren Rose, Police Operations Bureau, requesting council approval to receive and expend fiscal year 2024 Stop Violence Against Women Act formula grant funds in the amount of $50,216 and to indemnify the State of Hawaii Department of the Attorney General Project Award number 15JOVW-24-GG-00585-STOP to continue to provide program support for the sexual assault nurses examiners program related to training and equipment needs for the anticipated period of June 1st, 2025 through May 31st, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion or public testimony?
I have a very simple question.
Okay, with that, I'll suspend the rules. You can have the police department up.
Hi, thank you. Can you give us a very brief update on the number of sex assault nurse examiners that we have, if we are have openings, and if the pay scale is kind of the same? I know that has been a problem when they're paid almost nothing to be on call, and a lot of times that's on call. So I'm just wondering how that's going.
Morning, everyone. For the record, I'm Anthony Morita, Person in Crime Section Lieutenant, Kauai Police Department. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to be here. Councilmember Kaua'i, to answer your question, yes, fortunately, we're full staff.
Okay.
We have 6
Wow.
SANE or SAFEs, as we call them. We coined the term sexual assault forensic examiner to be more in line with the national standards. But yeah, we're fortunate. We're very blessed to have 6 willing team members that are on call, willing to assist. We don't have any vacancies at this point, but we still encourage anyone that's interested to visit our website to learn about the program and see if they'd want to be part of it at some point in case there is any vacancies. We do a lot of community engagement events right now, so our team members are out there in the public trying to show who we are and what services we provide for our community.
And can you just give a very brief explanation of what it is, in case there are people who are watching that don't understand, that they can know if they've been sexually violated, how our Kauai Police Department, in alliance with the YWCA, you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but if people make a complaint, a lot of times people are really afraid, victims are afraid to step forward. I just want them to understand it's kind, it's compassionate, and it's effective, and they're not going to be at Wilcox or someplace public.
Yes, so the Kauai Police Department, we have the unique responsibility in providing this service to our community. So we work closely with our YWCA partners, and they assist the victims whenever the victim is willing to file a complaint. They will initially meet with our patrol investigators or police personnel, make the initial complaint. Once that occurs, and if it meets the criteria that requires further investigation by our detectives will be contacted, and if a SANE examination is requested or required, that's where we handle that in our side of the house. Everything is secure, confidential, and discreet, and we do our best to minimize any further trauma on our victims and families.
Our arrest rate or investigation rate is remarkably successful because of this program.
We try our best to help our community and to not dilly-dally. When things come to our attention, we go full force in investigating and holding those responsible for those acts accountable for their actions.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Kaua'i?
Just a simple for clarification. These 6 positions you talk about are on call, so they're individuals and they're just operating as a independent consultant, if you will, and they actually work for you for this program?
Yes, they're actually employed by the county under the Kauai Police Department. They're no longer like independent contractors. They're actually, yeah.
So any work that you do with the YWCA is just the follow-up stuff, counseling, support, those
Yes,
kind of things?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we refer them to the Y, and the Y does amazing work in supporting and providing additional support for the victim and
So
the
it's referral for follow-up?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions for KPD? If not, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a simple follow-up comment. I just want to say I'm thankful that we have them fully staffed because that's been a problem.
Anyone in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, I'll call the meeting back to order. Any further discussion? If not, the motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item on the top of page 4, C 2025-146, communication from the county engineer requesting council approval of the indemnification provision contained in the application and permit for the occupancy and use of state highway right-of-way and permit restrictions and certification permit number 936, allowing the Department of Public Works to occupy and use the state of Hawaii right-of-way to perform work.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item on the claims, C 2025-147, communication from the county clerk transmitting a claim filed against the county of Kauai by Carrie Villabril Moore for vehicle damage pursuant to section 23.06 Charter of the County of Kauai. C 2025-148, communication from the county clerk transmitting a claim filed against the county of Kauai by Recovery Loss Center for Danica Elizabeth Katie Orsatelli for personal injury pursuant to section 23.06 Charter of the County of Kauai. And C 2025-149, communication from the county clerk transmitting a claim filed against the county of Kauai by Donald Greer for personal, physical, and punitive damages pursuant to section 23.06 Charter of the County of Kauai.
Move to refer to the county attorney for disposition and report back as necessary.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
Next item on the committee for reports from your planning committee, CRPL 2025-08.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, please.
From your finance and economic development committees, CRFED 2025-12. On page 5, CRFED 2025-13, 14, 15, and 16.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. You know, at this point, because we have some presentations coming up, I'm just going to take a caption break now so we don't have to interrupt the presentation. So with that, we'll take our 10-minute caption break. Okay, call the meeting back to order. We'll get to our resolutions. Can we have the first resolution, please?
Resolution 2025-29, resolution approving the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 operating budget for the Hawaii State Association of Counties.
Second.
Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, all in favor, I'm sorry, roll call.
Councilmember Bulasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Carvalho.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaneshiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaua'i.
Aye.
Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next, please.
Resolution 2025-30, resolution establishing traffic lane modifications, stop signs, speed limits, and bike lanes on Kanika Street, establishing crosswalks on Kanika Street, Nuhu Road, Ono Street, and Mono Street, establishing a roundabout at the intersection of Nohu Street and Kanika Street, and establishing stop signs on Ono Street and Mono Street, County of Kauai.
Thank you. With that, I'll suspend the rules for Public Works.
Morning, Chair, members of Council. Michael Mole, Chief of Engineering for the record. I have a brief presentation that I was going to give just to run through just a summary of the effort here and the reasons for the work. So, sorry, I thought I'd do that. Okay, so I'll just do this quick presentation showing kind of what we're thinking on Kanika Street and what we're planning to do here. As noted in the memo we sent to you, we did go to the public with a public meeting about a year ago on this and had some comments, changes based on that. But we recently resurfaced Kanika Street. It's been a little more than recent now, but it still has temporary striping from when it was resurfaced a while back now, but enough that we can simply just take out the temporary stripes and put in new stripes. So that's why we're coming to you now with this. We've been planning this for a while. So the goal is to restripe Kanika Street to improve safety for everyone. It's thinking largely about pedestrian safety, making it easier to cross the street at intersections and at other locations, reducing conflicts from motorists at left turns, and just in general reducing motorist conflicts, reducing motorist speed, and then having pedestrians be further from motor vehicles with the bike lanes provide that buffer. And then adding bicycle lanes is another benefit to the effort. Talk about speed first. The speed limit currently is 25 miles per hour posted. The resolution actually includes establishing that speed limit because it was never established by county council in the past, we found out. It also establishes a 15 mile per hour school zone in areas that we'll talk about in a moment. The challenge right now is people are going a lot faster than that. Based on what we see out there looking at the traffic in the area. And that's unsafe. And so we think that by converting that, we'll be able to reduce the speeds to slower speeds, getting closer to that 25 mile per hour posted speed. So a few things that the speed affects, we'll kind of go through these briefly in slides, just that if you're driving faster, the less you can see next to you on the sides of the road as you're looking further down the road. It also makes it harder to avoid a crash, and it makes crash severity worse. So a couple of slides just kind of to show that change in braking and reaction time. So if someone's driving at say 25 miles per hour, they can, once in the time that it takes them to see whatever they need to stop for, and then actually stop, it'll take about 150 feet between those 20 and 30 mile per hour bars on this chart. But if they're speeding at 35 to 40 miles per hour, which is not uncommon on a 25 mile per hour posted street like this, it could take 250, 300 plus feet to stop. And so it's just much harder to avoid a collision if something happens at these faster speeds. The other issue is pedestrian safety. At lower speeds, at 20 to 30 miles per hour, at 20 miles per hour, we see a very low chance of death for a pedestrian, about 5%. It's up to 50% at 30, and once you're at 40, which again is the speed people will often go on a street of 25 miles per hour, it's about 85%. And you're pretty certain you're going to die at that point, unfortunately, if you're hit by a car. So we try to keep those speeds low in areas where we have people walking. And of course, this is access road to Chief's Kamakahele Middle School. So the proposal is to do this general idea of converting from this 4-lane undivided roadway to this 3-lane, 2 lanes in each direction, plus a center turn lane, and using the remaining space to mark bike lanes. And from a speed point of view, one of the big benefits is simply that you can't pass each other. If the prudent driver sets the speed, if there's a driver who is going the speed limit, the drivers behind them can't go flying past them. So that's one big reason why the speeds are lower. I want to talk about safety briefly. So if you think about this situation where you're driving down one of these 4-lane roads, say on Kaneka Street, and you're headed west towards Puhi Road, and there's a driver who wants to turn left into the neighborhood at Mono Street, which is the neighborhood there down towards the condos, the Halanani condos. They put their turn signal on, right? And if you don't react in time, you could rear end that car in front of you. But with the situation with the 3-lane configuration, that driver's in another lane. They move out of your lane, the through lane, and you continue straight through without having to worry about rear-ending the driver in front. Or you don't want to rear-end the driver in front, so you change lanes in this 4-lane scenario. And then, of course, there's a car in that next lane. You can do a crash where the X shows in this drawing here on the left. Again, with the 3-lane configuration, the driver moves out of the through lane and makes that a lot safer, so everyone doesn't have that problem with people shifting back and forth to avoid turning cars. And then lastly, this one only exists at one place on Kaneka Street, but I think it's OEO Street. There's a cross intersection there. Not a huge problem on this street, but it could be on other streets with busier roads, where if two drivers are making a left, both these red cars are making left turns to the minor street. And they actually block each other's view of cars in the next lane. And if you've probably experienced this, and maybe not on Kaneka Street, but probably on streets like Kalepa and Nuho, where there's higher volumes occurring, like turning into the mall from Kalepa Street over by Home Depot. I see that there all the time. I see this happen. And I've never seen a crash, fortunately, but I see this situation where you can't see that car in the next lane when you're trying to make that left turn. So this is the other big safety benefit for motorists, is to remove this type of crash. And this is the real significant injury type crash, right? If that driver makes that left turn in the left image here and starts making that turn and they have a passenger, the driver in that yellow car is going to hit them at whatever speed they're going, because they're not going to see that car turning either, right? So it's hard. They have a hard time slowing down in time. So that's a pretty significant crash right on the side of the car, which could be really detrimental to someone who's sitting in the passenger side of the car. And then lastly, from a safety perspective, for pedestrian safety, we have this situation. This exists now. Primarily, where we're concerned mostly about this now is at the crosswalk to Chief's Kamakahele Middle School there. That's just down from the roundabout. You get this situation where a driver stops to let a pedestrian cross. On the right here, you see in the image. And that's what you want. Drivers stop for pedestrians. We see that people do that most of the time here on Kauai. But the next driver may not see the pedestrian, may not know why that driver has stopped. And so that creates a situation where the driver just keeps going, and there's a potential for a pretty high-speed pedestrian crash. And not having two through lanes can help reduce this scenario. It won't eliminate this possibility, because you still have turning cars that will be using separate lanes, even at that crosswalk. We can talk more about that when we get to that image of that location in the future, but it will reduce it from the point of view of two cars that are going through, right, and reduce this chance for this, what we call multiple threat crash type for pedestrians. I want to quickly go through the summary of the resolution. Hopefully you've seen it, but I'll just kind of go through this. I'll try to talk about the things to some degree that are in the resolution. Some of the things that are already in place, have been there for years, but were never taken to council for some reason, so we're correcting all those things. Other things we're changing, right? So this is just an overall image of the Kaneka Street from Puhi Road on the left side of the image to Nuho Street, where the roundabout is at the shopping center on the right side, or east and northeast side of Kaneka Street. And so the whole street is 25 miles per hour posted now. Again, there was no resolution for that, so we were correcting that with this resolution, adding that 25 mile per hour posted speed officially with the resolution. And then a portion of the street highlighted in the darker color of Conecuh Street between Newhoe Street and a little bit east of Mono Street is also a school zone. So when school is in session by county code and resolution, they're in place. The school speed limits are in place from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on school days. A couple other things that don't show up directly on this map, but I'll talk about now are there's some things like the stop signs at some of the cross streets, like Mono Street, Ono Street. I think just those two, I think, are added here because those were not done by resolution. So I want to talk about those. There's a few other things that were being added that hadn't been addressed previously. And I'll just jump into the page by page here. You have this in your resolution as well. But this is just kind of going from Puhi Road to Conecuh Street, on Conecuh Street to Newhoe Street. The reconfiguration here, one of the things that's important to think about this location is that from a vehicle capacity and delay perspective, we're not changing anything at the stop sign at Puhi Road. You still have 2 lanes approaching Puhi Road on Conecuh Street. So you have right now it's just 2 lanes. I don't think there's arrows on them necessarily, but you have a right lane and a left lane, right for turning right onto Puhi Road, left lane for turning left onto Puhi Road. And that'll be the same. So you'll still have the same ability to make those turns, and you won't have any additional delay associated with that. And effectively, each intersection, besides that one where you don't have any stop signs, it's essentially still the same. You have one lane for turning left and one for going straight through. Since there's no stops on any other intersections, like at Ono Street here, the through movement on a single lane is not an issue from a capacity or congestion point of view. Moving on, this is kind of stepping on our way down the street. This intersection with Mono Street and Conecuh Street. One of the things we're proposing here, because Mono Street is actually relatively busy as a neighborhood street. It goes back and connects to a fair number of housing areas with some apartments and duplexes. And so not only do we have the left turn lane going into Mono Street, but allowing this left turn merge lane coming out here with the ability to turn left into a shelter lane in the center, like we see on many of our roads on Kauai. Same thing at Puhi Park, left turn lane in and using that lane on the way out, so you can make that turn in 2 stages as a driver. Only have to yield to traffic in one direction at a time. Just makes those turns a little easier, both into and out of these driveways and streets. And this was the hardest spot. This location here at the Chief's Kamakahele driveway and the entry to the Regency housing condos there. We struggle with this one. We proposed taking the bike lane all the way through in the westbound direction. We took that to the public. There were concerns about that and really needed the right turn lane for motorists to turn into the school because it queues up, and we agreed with that. And so we basically took the right lane and made it a dedicated right turn lane to store cars turning in, and a very long left turn lane for cars turning into the school from the west, coming from Puhi Road. So again, there's some storage for vehicles in those areas. We add these stop lines here before the crosswalks, setting them further back to try to avoid that multiple threat problem. Because if you have cars waiting to turn left into the school and kids trying to cross, that multiple threat crash type we talked about can still occur when a driver is going through in the eastbound through lane here. So that asking drivers to stop further back when they're yielding to pedestrians with that stop line is beneficial and hopefully will reduce that incidence. The other thing we struggled with was how to treat the turns into the Regency Huleia condos. And we decided that from the point of view of trying to get cars out of the school site, this was something we worked with the school, that we wanted to use that center lane for a left turn merge lane coming out as opposed to the left turns in, which means that there will occasionally be a situation where the left turners turning into that condo complex are blocked or it will block the through movement for drivers going westbound. This was, again, the most challenging location. But it was pretty important given the how many parents and others use that driveway during school arrival and dismissal time. The only time we see any congestion at all in this area is during those times, in the morning and in the afternoon. And this one just shows the last bit. This other school driveway is gated most of the time. So we're showing a left turn into both of these locations. This is the Regency at Puakea, housing for senior citizens. And so we allowing a small left turn lane into both of those locations as well. And the roundabout itself isn't changing, although the resolution does include the establishment of the roundabout, because that was never done back when that was built by the developer. So we're cleaning that up as well. And one last thing I'll mention is that both Conecuh Street, portions of Conecuh Street, and actually I think all of Conecuh Street and portions of Newhouse Street, or maybe portions of both, technically are still owned by Grove Farm, but there's a right of entry the county has over those, and those are being dedicated. We're working with Grove Farm to get those dedicated. But because there's a right of entry over those streets in favor of the county and the public, these resolutions should be established as we understand it. And I think that's my last slide. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know the flashing crosswalk signs, are those going to be placed anywhere, like right around the school and stuff? Those seem to help a lot.
We already have them at that crosswalk.
Okay.
That last crosswalk that I showed, we already have the flashing there as well as sorry.
You have to start over. We already have that.
Yeah, yes, we already have flashing beacons at the 4 crosswalks at the roundabout, as well as the crosswalk that's located at the westernmost school entrance.
Okay. And then I guess just one other one. That meeting that we had at the middle school, Kaua'i Middle School,
yes,
about a year ago, I think, that was really well attended. I think people were all in alignment with it. Is any of this really different from what we looked at then?
The main changes were at that intersection, the school entrance there. We adjusted it to change how some of the turn lanes and bike lanes work there.
So you've obviously talked to Puakea and the middle school principal, or
yes, the principal has changed. I talked to the new principal about a month ago or so, and discussed the project. She wasn't as familiar as the previous principal had, and there were residents of the Puakea Huleia condos at the meeting as well.
Okay, so it's not going to surprise anybody.
No, although it has been a little while. It's taken some little bit of time to get to this stage, but yes, it shouldn't be a surprise for folks that had heard about the meeting. I'm sure there's people around the county who didn't hear about the meeting, didn't know about it, and will probably hear about it today after watching this meeting or afterward.
Any other questions? No, thank you. Anybody in the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, I'll call a meeting back to order. Any further discussion? Ms. Holland?
I just want to thank you for all your hard work, Michael, and for thinking so detailed about the safety of this area. I would love to see a mailer go out to all of Kauai, teaches people how to drive in a roundabout, but that's a future.
Anyone else? Mr. Bulasan?
I'd like just to echo all the hard work with Public Works. This is vital. Puhi and that corridor is very important. Especially Puhi Park too, right there. I know a lot of kids will walk across dangerously. And so anything that we can do to make this safer is fantastic work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Carvalho.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaneshiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaua'i.
Aye.
Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Next item.
On page 6, bills for second reading. Bill number 2954, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Article 14, Kauai County Code 1987 as amended relating to the Public Access Open Space Natural Resources Preservation Fund.
Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalli. Aye. Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i. Council Chair Raposo.
Aye. Next item, please.
Bill number 2955, a bill for an ordinance approving a collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit 1 between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2029.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kawalio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i.
Aye.
Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item.
Bill number 2956, a bill for an ordinance approving a collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit 2 between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2029.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalio. Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i.
Aye.
Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item, please.
Bill number 2957, a bill for an ordinance approving a collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit 3 between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2029.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalio. Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i. Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Next item.
Bill number 2958, a bill for an ordinance approving collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit 4 between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2029.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalio. Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i. Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. And next item.
Bill number 2959, a bill for an ordinance approving a collective bargaining agreement for bargaining unit 13 between July 1, 2025 and June 30th, 2029.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalio. Councilmember Cowden.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i. Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Can you read us into executive session, please?
Yes, -1145 pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92.4 and 92.5A4 and the Kauai County Charter Section 2.07E, the Office of the County Attorney requests an executive session with the council to provide the council with a briefing and request authority for a possible settlement proposal in a claim filed by Suzanne K. Smith and related matters. This briefing and consultation involves considerations of the powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and/or liabilities of the council and the county as they relate to this agenda item.
Move to go into executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or public testimony? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Bolasan.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalio.
Aye.
Councilmember Cowden.
Do we vote before we move into executive session?
This is to get us into
Okay,
executive
aye.
session.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Kanashiro.
Aye.
Councilmember Kuli'i. Council Chair Raposo.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, with that, we'll reconvene in executive session chambers in 5 minutes.
Test, test. We'll be back in a few short moments.
All right, ready? Back to order. Mr. Bracken?
Matt Bracken, County Attorney. So executive session 11:45 was held regarding a pending claim. That discussion is confidential and nothing will be disclosed at this time.
Thank you for that. With that, this meeting, with no objections, this meeting is now adjourned.